Hi, I'm Siofra Bradigan, and this is Siofra's Magic Alcove. So we're going to continue on with looking through the Vampire Codex in this video. We stopped at page 81, so we're starting from there. And the next section is on the dedicants, which are basically the people that you're bringing into the path. So they talk about it being a sacred responsibility to instruct the people that you have awakened. Um, and it's a burden that shouldn't be undertaken lightly. So I guess this is their idea of ethics. And the fact that being near you can make them start to awaken. You're supposed to teach these people discretion so they don't pull negative energy into themselves and understand that, everything they do is going to impact the whole family, thereby teaching them responsibility because they've awakened into a great power. Teaching them respect for the vital force that sustains them, and I quote, and respect above all for those who provide this energy. Those whom we feed upon give us a great gift, and even if they are unaware of this giving, we should never fail to appreciate what we received, end quote. So basically, they're saying so long as you respect the person who's giving you a gift, whether they know it or not, then that means it's ethical and you're doing what you're doing is fine. Yeah. They talk about the link going both ways, and that they can feel you and know your thoughts when they so choose. That means the people that you're awakening. So you can use the link to exchange energy with them at a distance, and they can reach out to you. This is setting up the whole basis, the foundation, that there is a strong telepathic and energetic link between the vampire and the person who's being fed upon, or the dedicant who's becoming the vampire, however you want to look at that, because I think in this case both things are happening. They're being fed upon and awakened to become their own, vampire later down the road. And so you're starting off with the notion that this is just a normal progression of how this works without any question about free will, whether the person wants to be involved in this or not, um, whether it's good for the participant. I mean, there's a lot of questions here in in my mind, at any rate. You're supposed to cherish the bond, and if you are irresponsible enough to abuse the connection, uh, be forewarned that the great love your children hold for you can turn into hatred that is as far reaching and deep. This whole thing is just a little muddy because it reminds me of the relationship between master and slave. The notion that the master is giving comfort and opportunity and food and shelter and so forth to the slave, and the slave should be grateful for all of that, and that if you step wrong on them, then they could revolt. It's like, yeah. Anyhow, the entire thing is just kind of um, off kilter, I guess, would be one word phrase to use for this. That this is a healthy relationship is by no means obvious to me. Um, so then she goes on to talk about sympathetic vampires, and these are people that haven't learned how to do it correctly. They're just out there. They can be just random people, and they haven't really learned all the rules and the best ways of doing it. So she says that many make a mockery of our need by engaging in feeding for pleasure or sport. So these people are the kind of vampires she wants to distance herself from, because in her mind, in the mind of the groups that she's representing, they're doing this because they absolutely need it and they can't survive without it, but it's not because they like it. or they find the contest of wills fun. Um, she says some will learn how to feed on vitality for the power that it gives them, and some will learn in order to pass for our kind. So they're like fakers, I guess, amongst her group that have the ability to feed off of other people's life force, but aren't truly a member of the community, and they're trying to pass, I guess. Uh, and that this is not all that they are, they have lots of other things. So, yeah. So that's the sympathetic vampire. That I guess that's not part of the people um, that she considers the true ones. And she says that a lot of times the energy of the person they're feeding from has the energy has diminished past the point of natural recovery, and so then they have to feed consciously or unconsciously. And it's not uncommon for those who have been overfed upon to become fixated on the vampiric process. I guess sort of like an addiction, like a drug. Recognition, of course, is the idea of finding somebody who belongs to your family. You should be able to look into that person's eyes and see their past. Um, and there's an instant bond between you. Now, that's the thing, is like I've had certainly many people that I've met where I have some kind of energetic connection to them in a past life. Some of them have been pretty interesting, and they've been short-lived relationships because at this point we weren't compatible, or we had nothing in common, or it wasn't right, or what have you. But in the beginning, I really had this misunderstanding about that connection, that meant that we were supposed to get back together, we were supposed to do things together, that this was a fated meeting, etc. And that's really not the case. You are supposed to have free will, and each life should be different. If you're just repeating the same relationships over and over again, I don't think that you're growing very well. Um, but she's talking about ways to recognize their kind, and that's one of the ways. The aura that the person has, deep purple or blue aura surrounded by nimbus gray or black. Um, the outer layer is supposed to have a mist-like appearance and can stretch into tendrils, which would be their feeding tendrils, I'm assuming. And so, you know, if you can see that on someone, you could recognize the fact that they are a psychic vampire. The tendrils themselves can be varying shades of gray, sometimes rope-like, sometimes smooth. They're not always there. They can be small fine filaments that can be difficult to see. Um, she says that their eyes often change color and it's influenced by their mood, or eyes are very complex in color. This is like a physical characteristic that I'm sure a lot of people share. I have hazel eyes. Hazel eyes are known for changing color. That's like one of the primary things about people with hazel eyes, is that they change color. And I think that, besides mood, it's environment, what I happen to be wearing. Um, and certainly when I was doing a lot of channeling and so forth, my appearance would change. Other people would see my appearance change for them. That doesn't mean I'm a psychic vampire or that I ever was a part of this. It's just a thing, but she's claiming it for theirs. Um, they also tend to be very attractive and well built. Apparently, this is the whole myth that, they're beautiful. Whoops, sorry. I guess I shouldn't have blown my nose. I forgot. They have like a powerful, intimidating presence, charisma, or whatever. There's like an aura of mystery around them. This sounds like almost every sociopath out there. She also says that there's certain types of body types and facial features that tend to occur. She has different castes. She has three different castes: the priest caste, the warriors, and the counselors. And each one of them have different needs and so forth. The priest caste tend to be tall and thin. The warriors stoutly built, with a powerful presence. Counselors, lithe and sensuous, energy feminine in spite of physical gender. The warriors, mainly masculine energy because of their strength. Other qualities that they might have: natural sensitivity to energies of all types. This could be just anybody who happens to be a sensitive. The priest caste is the most sensitive, and they react to sunlight, extremes in temperatures, and electromagnetic energies. Well, okay. Um, Everyone in all castes are responsive to shifts in their energy. Body temperature is influenced by your energy state. These are just, it's sort of like when you see things on the internet that says if you're awakening or going through, like, transformation, or if there's a solar storm, or if you're an empath, these are the characteristics of what you will feel, which are sort of general enough that they could fit anybody going through any kind of shift, uh, or it's a way of making your mind go to those particular attributes, and it's everybody's got all of these things at one time or another. So I think it's a way to justify and rationalize the categorization of it, and also to normalize it and say, hey, you know, this is just who we are. This is just the way we are, that kind of thing. Um, so I really don't see much in the way of useful information in this part, except for, talking about how great they are, how acute senses can be, how they can hear better. I hear better. I've heard better ever since I was young. I could hear radar at one point in my life, which was very strange, but I could tell when there was radar up ahead, and warn people who I was riding with that there was a radar trap. And we go up a hill and around a corner, and sure enough, there'd be a cop car there with a radar sensor going off. Um, they also claim to be skilled at empathy and telepathy, and these are natural qualities that they're born with. I don't believe that they're empathetic, because if they were truly empaths feeding off of other people's life force energy instead of accessing available energy that's there for everyone and teaching themselves how to do that, would be a primary goal of someone who had this, I would call, disability. They have an innately predatory nature and a strong sense of elitism. So, yes, I would say that that's probably true, that they like the idea of being a quote unquote cut above the rest, somehow more refined and better and so forth than the rest of the people out there. And they have a difficulty integrating into modern society because our values linger from times long ago. Well, I have a hard time assimilating into modern society because my brain works completely different than the average person. And anyone who has psychic abilities, is able to read energy, healing, whatever, or empathy, is going to have trouble. That's a common issue for pagans and for lots of other people too, I'm sure. They also have, according to her, a sadistic streak and are easily addicted to energies generated by power, fear, and control. Now, does this remind you of the master-slave relationship, or the sociopath who likes to dominate others? And really, this is about power over someone else. It's not power with. So, regardless of some of the symbiotic relationship language that she tends to use, the relationship itself is, you are the one who is supplying the energy for me to survive. You are beneath me, I am above you. And that's what's going on here. And then she says, even the unawakened have a sense of us. So, they can tell who you are because you put off this powerful aura. And people who are feeling insecure about who they are and what their purpose in life is could be very attracted to that notion of, that's one of the reasons why we like vampire movies. I like vampire movies. Not that I want to be a vampire or have a vampire suck on me, energetically or otherwise. But yeah, the awakened will recognize us as we recognize them. And that is one of the things, is like when you meet someone who is a psychic vampire, you can tell what they're trying to do. So she calls this the lonely path. And that they have to face all these trials and move forward and persevere any regardless, and it's a lonely path, and this sets them apart from others. Again, we're back to like the elitism and so forth, and being different than the rest of humanity and so forth, but this being a good thing. It makes us strangers among ordinary folk. I love the kind of language that she uses here. But then she says we shouldn't feel ashamed or guilty for what it is in our natures to do. Good and evil cannot be applied to our state. These are human terms. Now, while I agree that good and evil are not as defined in general, like, we take those terms and decide this is good, this is evil, and I think that the comparison thing, it depends on where you are, like, and what's going on around you, and what you think is evil is going to be different than what I think is evil. um, a natural disaster can be definitely evil if you lose your house to you, negative. So, but this is a way of just getting around that altogether, so there's no ethical issue when it comes to it. It's like what we do is just who we are, and you are so incapable of understanding our true nature and what we represent that your rules or definitions of what's good and bad don't apply to us. We decide this for ourselves. In reality, we all decide this for ourselves, but aside from that, and that very few people can understand them, woe is them. Sorry. But again, people that are looking for um, a purpose or an explanation, and who aren't interested in maybe having to do the actual work that's involved in transforming yourself, the idea that this is just who I am, this is how I was made, and I can't do anything about it, is a serious trap for all of us. Any one of us can fall into this as an idea. Like, it means that we don't have to take personal responsibility for changing our personality, our goals, our way of thinking, our perceptions of reality, how we interact with the world, and so forth. That it's just, that's it. This is just who I am, and I have to accept it. And I wholeheartedly disagree with that assumption right off on its face. It's like, no, I consider people who want to go there and just accept it, they're lazy. They don't want to do the work, or they're confused and they don't understand that they actually can take control. They're being ridden by their own subconscious. They're being shaped by their experiences instead of using their experiences to shape themselves. And so, it's just, that's it. So, more justification here. One of the things that she thinks is good about them is they can take things away from you, empty you out, so then you can be filled with something new. Or by taking it out, then you can appreciate what you already have, because now it's gone. Like, excuse me. And that every person they come into contact with is changed. Well, again, every person, every experience that we have will change us one way or another. Even if I mean, regardless of how we work or interact with the universe, That's the whole point of it, isn't it? We get new ideas from people, we have experiences, we decide that are good or not good for us. We find out what we can and cannot eat based upon our experiences. We refine our idea of who we are or who we want to be. So that's a statement that really doesn't have any meaning to it at all. She goes on along those lines for a while. Then she talks about cycles and how sensitive they are to the rise and falls of cycles and so forth, reacting to the tides and so forth, and peaks of sensitivity, changes in power, oscillations of spirit and matter, blah blah. And this is anyone who is involved with, trying to be a part of the world itself and trying to tap into spirit and the universe and so forth. Um, and that, some people are more grounded than others. Um, I guess the movement of heavenly bodies can affect how things work. Well, yeah. I mean, sometimes the energy moving in the direction you're going, this is the same as here's the river, and the river is going in this direction. The river is crossing your path. Is the river going the way you want it to, like the way you want to go? You can jump in the river and you can go downstream with it, and it can carry you, and you don't need as much energy to get where you're trying to go. Or it's not going the way you want, and you can sit on the bank and wait, or go in another direction, find a bridge, go across the river. I mean, these are all about these sorts of choices and so forth. And she's talking about, the things that we do all the time, the shifts in the tides of energy, the changing of the seasons, etc. All of those things they talk about. So they have the same language as most pagans have, and this whole thing is all about, this whole bit is about that. So the next chapter is on alterations and caste. I love the word caste. It means, like, sort of like in India, if you're not born into the right caste, you can't learn yoga, for example. So a caste is a narrow definition of an ability that once you're born into it, you don't have any other choices. It narrows your choices. Um, their subtle bodies get altered by what they carry through their life. Um, and this is the reason why she says they've been severed from the universal umbilical, giving them conscious control of incarnations and allowing us to exceed the limitations of flesh. Yeah, I don't think that's true, because if they could exceed the limitations of flesh, they wouldn't need to feed on other people's life force energy. They'd be able to get energy from the air or anywhere else. And conscious control of incarnations is something that any one of us that is trying to evolve as a spiritual being can accomplish. Don't have to be a vampire to do it. So it's not like specific to them. She's just trying to claim it. Now, here is a statement that worries me. She has a lot of this kind of stuff going into this part. Quote, the alteration is permanent and has been worked upon the very substance of the subtle body. It does not heal between lifetimes, for that would defeat its original intent. And what that does is set up the possibility in your mind, your subconscious, your unconscious, or whatever, that once something has taken place, once some change has happened, it's impossible to change it back. And that is like a way of thinking that works against the possibility of actually being in charge of your own self and taking responsibility for your own actions, transforming your life, becoming the person you want to be instead of being stuck with who you are. It's just the way it is. So, another one. Um, and then she goes on with the priest caste. Um, their alteration, this sense, is so extreme that it inhibits them from processing anything but vital energy for their own energetic maintenance. So now this is where um, I had an experience with a woman here in town who called herself Sister Amata, and she considered herself a nun of the universe or whatever. And she declared that the only thing that kept her alive was actually getting massage therapy. One of the other massage therapists came to me and asked me if I would work on her because all of the therapists that went to her house were so depleted of energy and felt so drained every time they saw her that, it was like seriously inhibiting their ability to function, and they knew that I wouldn't fall for that. And so they figured I would be safe. And so I called the woman on the phone. I insisted that she come to my office, not, you know, I wasn't going to go to her house because that was a long way to go. She decided to meet me in the park. And the first moment, basically, that we met, she put her hand on the back of my head and she ran her hand down my spine and attempted to implant, um, I guess, cords or whatever they call them directly into my chakras in order to influence me. And I'm like, excuse me, that's kind of rude. No, you can't do that. I'm not okay with that. And so, I was on alert before we met, and I have pretty good protections against that kind of thing happening. I just noted it, and I'm like, okay, so this is something to keep in mind whenever I have anything to do with this woman. She's a psychic vampire. There's just if no ifs, ands, or bets about it. And I would imagine that she would qualify in her mind as one of the priest caste. That's the only thing that makes her keep alive is using other people's energy, and she got it through getting massage so she could feed off the massage therapist. She did come to my office once and kept repeating all that stuff while I was working on her, but she never came back again. So clearly she didn't get fed the way she wanted to. And, it's like, no, not interested. Um, they talk about priests that haven't awakened and how fragile they are, and they can have allergies, nervous disorders, heart conditions, or other weaknesses, and that through feeding they can get rid of those debilities. um, but if they're not able to feed enough and keep their energy in balance, then their weaknesses will return with greater force. So again, I guess they see this as a way to correct a physical ailment. um, and in their case, the anchor point, she says, is the solar plexus chakra, the force focus of will. The counselors are constantly taking in and cycling energy, and their anchor point is the navel chakra, the center of connection. So they connect energetically and empathically with everything around them, and this can lead to emotional or mental instability. So that sounds like fun. The warrior caste grounds and shields themselves, and their anchor point is the root chakra. So their connection to the life energy here is the strongest. So, so she says, often well meaning awakened, which would be like us, will take note of our change and misinterpret it. They will see it as an energy blockage or subtle body wound. They may offer to heal us, not understanding that no healing is required. Their efforts should be discouraged, for they do not comprehend our nature. The alteration is what makes us Keprian, which is the name for her particular group of people. It is intentional and need not be repaired. So this is a way to prevent anyone who joins the group from actually getting the help that they need, because I disagree with her assumption. They are broken. There is a problem because life force energy in the universe is available for all. It's just a matter of learning how to access it, and it can be repaired. So I guess that's a warning to all psychic vampires out there to stay away from me because I'll try to fix you. And I find it interesting because, that's immediately what I would do, would be to try to fix that. And that's what I would see because that is actually the reality of what's going on. And she just wants to maintain the there's nothing wrong with us, we don't need to change paradigm. Um, so she goes on about the caste system, the three castes, which again we just mentioned, really, which was the warrior caste, the counselor caste, and the priest caste. So she goes on to explain more about those, that the priest caste have the most heightened sensitivity to energy, and that they severed themselves completely from the umbilical of the universe many long time ago, and they can't be sustained by universal energies or process most other energies. And so, yeah, I mean, limited to say the least. Anything that is the definition of a parasite, something that can only exist off the life force of something else. These are not symbiotic relationships. Um, if they can't keep it up, maintain themselves, then they get weakened. They supposedly, the priest caste treads the places between spirit and matter, life and death. So, I mean, any person who's gone through a shamanic dismemberment like I have, or similar, that's one of the keynotes of a shamanic healer, medicine person, or whatever, is the ability to straddle the worlds between life and death. I do that. I'm definitely not a psychic vampire. I'd have to be a psychic vampire in order to do that. And their energies are both masculine and feminine, which is what we call balance. So, and that they're the visionaries. Warrior caste, least sensitive to energy, naturally shield against the energies in their environment. But so, their connection to the earth is still there. It hasn't been completely severed. So it helps them out. Apparently, they have access to a lot of rage, heightened by their rage. And I'm like, okay. Then the counselors, they need to take some energy for themselves, but their greatest need is to perpetuate the flow and to keep things connected. So they do surface feeding, they touch people, they take and give energy constantly, seeking out interactions, situations where they can interact, like going to clubs and, dance halls and and whatever. Um, she says they make good channels and excel at invocation. And if you don't remember, invocation is bringing in a spirit into you to become part of you. Sort of channeling would definitely be something that would be invoked. They can sometimes be overwhelmed by other people's emotions, or they can actually lose their own identity. In other words, they don't have very good boundaries. I see that problem with a lot of this is like their ability to have healthy boundaries is limited. And they go on to talk about that. So their past lives, the disembodied, they know that they don't cease to exist once the body has died. Well, yeah. They don't incarnate immediately after death either. They remember the in-between times. Apparently, this is something she thinks that only they do. I remember some of my in-between, between a death and another life. I remember what happened in between. Again, doesn't have to be, they don't have like they're not the only ones who can have that or do that. Um, so talk about spiritual immortality, which is remembering in between as well, guardian of the memories and so forth, past lives, the higher self. She uses a lot of our own buzzwords in this, and clearly she is, aware of what those words are and what they mean and so forth, which sort of lends an air of credibility to the material in the sense that some of this stuff is accurate, but then it gets slightly twisted. It's sort of, the ability for a sociopath to do that is just quite phenomenal. And make it think somehow it's all your idea. So she goes on here with the feeding of the energy and stuff. So I think that actually this is a good place to stop, and we can go into how they perceive that they feed and whatnot. We don't need to do everything all at the same time and make it extremely long and difficult for people to follow. But that's the whole thing is that any any group that's trying to justify its existence, if it's a religious or spiritual cult of any kind or a path or what have you, finding these explanations for what happens and how special they are and how much they're needed or how much they're misunderstood or try to find people that are, I'm assuming in this case, somewhat injured to start with, otherwise they wouldn't fit into um, the parameters that she has set in order to be psychic vampires, uh, and trying to give it a semblance of a structure so that people feel somewhat more secure, I guess, inside of it. That there are some rules and so forth, even though the rules are basically not healthy rules. I mean, having rules is not does not mean having boundaries. Rules are different from boundaries. Boundaries are what you feel is right for you, and rules are more what you want other people to do or what you are allowed to do and not allowed to do, and doesn't necessarily mean what's right for you. And that's the thing, is like, as a pagan, um, I don't follow other people's rules. I have my own sense of personal ethics and what I think is good and not good behavior. And I decide that partly with the experience that I had when my self was shattered and I got to meet the part of me that wasn't good, wasn't happy, to say the least. The keys I left behind and what happened to them, and had to remember that stuff. I have that image, that spirit of me, mirror, I guess, of my soul, that I can use in real time now to be able to determine whether an action is going to increase and improve that, or decrease and damage that. And so I have, like, it's hard to explain exactly what it is or how I do it, except that it's like it's me. I know that it's me. It's that inner me that I've taken responsibility for taking care of and making sure that it doesn't get lost like it did before. And the universe wants things to be healthy and well. So if I look at that and I think at it, and I think about something I want to do, and it gets dimmer or looks tortured or is uncomfortable, or there's some weird feeling coming off of it, I know there's something I need to look at closer. I need to pay attention to that, and I do. And so it has become my litmus paper, I guess. It's like, and I think all of us can do that. We just have to get to that point where we're paying attention to that true inner self and noticing and caring about what that's doing. It's kind of the path of heart versus the path of the mind. Things might sound good, but just because they're using words and key phrases and so forth, and are tapping into some kind of insecurity or whatever that we might have, doesn't mean that they're actually good for you. So that's sort of, I guess, a basic difference between an actual boundary for yourself, which is to protect you, and a rule that someone's imposing on you or you're imposing on yourself that may not always fit. Things happen and change in the moment. So, anyway, hopefully this is enlightening or useful or something. I don't know. I just decided to do the whole book. So, I'm going to do it, come hell or high water. And I'll do other videos in between, obviously. So we're not just on this and nothing else, because it can be, lengthy. So I hope you're all having a great time, and hope you're all staying safe. And this is Siofra's Magic Alcove, and I'm Siofra Bradigan, blessed be.